Does night one count as a main event at WrestleMania? Like what counts as a main event at a 2-night WrestleMania? Is it should it be the very last match of night two? Or is it the last match of either card of that night? Because when we're going into nights, whether it's a regular house show or a Monday Night Raw into a SmackDown when they were doing it back to back at one point in time, what really counts as the main event? So like, Ty, I ask you, man, does night one count as a main event at like if you have a main event and during night one of WrestleMania, does that count?
Oh boy, here's where the pitchforks come in. The answer is yes, but it feels like no. How about that? If you want to go, this is the funny thing. Whenever someone says on a technicality, if you have to say on a technicality, it never feels as valid as the actual thing. And that's what kind of sucks about the main events of night one and night two, because when you have 2 nights of WrestleMania, night one is the main event, let's put it in quotes. The last match on night one is a main event for WrestleMania, but it doesn't feel like one completely because it's also a halfway point for the entire weekend, right? Okay. Like, because it has that halfway point type of feeling, and because it usually has one of the lesser of the promoted matches on the card, it hasn't felt as prestigious as the night 2 main event in the entirety of all these day one WrestleMania. Well, these 2-night WrestleManias, with the exception of last year's when you had Cody Rhodes and Seth facing Roman and Rock, you could argue. But that's only because that felt more like a prelude to night 2, if anything. Yeah. And, we've had situations in the entertainment industry where one movie or one part, or where part 1 feels better than part 2. I'm not saying no. I loved, I liked Endgame. I liked Avengers Endgame, but there are plenty of people who will argue that Infinity War was better in significant numbers. And I can't sit here and disagree with that. Now, granted,
good analogy.
Granted, it's all subjective. It's all subjective. But if we're in the court of public opinion here, most people will consider night 1 a main event for the people that they like. Like, being in the night 1 main event is a great spot to be in. You do close WrestleMania. You just close the first half. You do main event one of the shows. Not to say no, but the reason why it even remotely matters to me is because of a couple different things, which will segue into other topics on this super show we're doing today, right? So, for example, number 1, this year is Roman Reigns' 10th WrestleMania main event. 2 of those 8 WrestleManias are closing night 1. So the ratio of main events for Roman when it comes to closing out WrestleMania, he's closed out WrestleMania 10 times if you count this upcoming main event, right?
Damn.
Yes. He is one of only a few wrestlers that can sit here and say they have main events even remotely close in those numbers.
So 10 of the last 11, that's a feat.
And out of those 10, 8 of those WrestleManias have closed the entire show. Only 2 have closed night 1, that being last year with the aforementioned tag match against Cody and Seth, and this year with the triple threat with CM Punk and Seth, which we will get to fairly soon. But notice how it's always been the end of the show. Now, granted, Roman Reigns has been the face of this promotion for over a decade. Not going to sit here and say no. But I offer you this. Would you feel like Roman Reigns properly main evented WrestleMania had a couple of these previous year main events had only happened on night 1? Would it have felt appropriate to you for Roman to only main event the night 1s? Not just off your personal feeling, but considering all factors. Had Roman main evented only night 1 these past couple of years, would it have felt correct? Would it, maybe creatively it would have felt correct, but would you have felt like this is kind of weird? Is what I'm saying.
I'll give you one better. So Ty, like, which of Roman's matches in the last 10 years, which main evented WrestleMania, which one of those matches would you have put as a night one main event?
versus Taker. There's no reason why that match should have been the ending note of a WrestleMania, and they know that. And granted, this is before the 2 night format, but even when it was one night, they know damn well that shouldn't have main evented. The build for that match was horrendous. There was literally a point where their stare down was just Taker putting his hands up like a question mark, and the screen faded to black. There's no reason why that had to main event WrestleMania, and they
That was
know
a
that.
that was a bad build, bro.
Now, I will say that could have been a night one main event if you wanted to add the main event pad statting moniker to it, which is another argument people will make. And it doesn't, and I don't want to say, okay, this is completely invalid because I don't want to take away these moments from Bianca and Sasha, if you will, from Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and the Usos, if you will. It's not for me to sit here and say, oh, I want these taken away. They
Mm-mm.
deserve those prominent spots at WrestleMania for all intents and purposes. And this is coming from a guy who didn't believe that Sasha and Bianca should have main evented that WrestleMania, not because they didn't deserve it, but because of how it was built to. They didn't do that build justice enough to where I felt like it felt weird to put it in the main event.
Oh, you
But
set it up for the next question. Lovely.
but
I like how you
but
did that.
but what I'm saying is that when you really put it into perspective, yes, it counts. No one's saying like yes, it counts, but it feels more like it counts on a technicality than it counts off of a prestige level in actuality. A lot of those main events that on night ones, I feel like do have a right to close the show. And I do feel like the people who are selected for those spots should be considered for closing the shows too. But as the company gets bigger and is trying to appeal even more to the mainstream, as there's more celebrity involvement, as they want WWE to be branding even more than they've already had, it's hard for me to sit here and actually be able to fathom them putting anyone else other than a Rock, a Cody, or a Roman in the main event. It's very similar to the Hogan era in that regard, where like you had people like Ricky Steamboat, you had people like Roddy Piper, you had people like Macho Man, you had Ted DiBiase, you had Jake Robb. The names I'm listing off right now were all-time greats, despite not being able to reach their full creative potential because they kept pushing Hogan. But if Hogan wasn't in the main event, as hardcore wrestling fans, we wouldn't have been bothered because we know a lot of these other people are deserving. But when you think about it as a whole, it feels weird that he's not in the main event because that's where he's been primed for so long and he is the big cash cow at that time, right? So I sit here and say it does count. But even if a technicality or a rule does make it feel, does validate it to a degree, how you feel about that technicality, how you feel about that situation, I feel is also as valid. And I feel like that's the reason why we have this whole debate in the first place. So, yes, Kevin Owens, multi time WrestleMania main eventer, asterisk, didn't get the main event that maybe he should have deserved. It feels more like something you can put on your resume, but you don't feel like it's as fulfilled of a accomplishment as it should be. Not to take it away from him, because considering his run, he's earned it. Considering
Mm.
his run, he deserves that praise, but there's still a slight hollowness to it because you know that he should have gotten the other thing. And that brings me back to a story. I know I've been talking for a minute. I apologize,
No, no,
folks.
no, 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 no. You could continue to cook.
But remember, one of the biggest stories of this year is CM Punk is finally main eventing at WrestleMania. I
Yes.
find an irony in that, considering the fact that CM Punk has been involved in a lot of big matches in WrestleMania in his career, and CM Punk has faced The Undertaker for his streak. It wasn't the main event. And understandably so, Rock and Cena.
That should have
That
been.
was Rock and Cena 2, mind you. He
I would
faced
have.
Chris Jericho for the WWE Championship. Wasn't the main event. And now that he's finally getting the main event, ironically enough, it is still not the main event of the entire show. And I'm happy that he's finally getting some form of it, but that's the key term. It's some form of it. And I hope they make the most out of it.
All right, so let's keep the topic on Punk real quick. Obviously, this past Friday on SmackDown, obviously it was officially named the fact that the triple threat match between him, Seth, and Roman will be main eventing night one at WrestleMania. And you alluded to the fact in terms of him finally getting that moment. So personally, in terms of like, do you? I think you might have answered it by saying the fact that it still feels like he got it, but he did, but it still feels like an asterisk to it. What do you think it would take for Punk to feel like he got that WrestleMania moment? Because obviously it's not this year. We're talking more so in the future ahead because now he has more time behind him than in front of him. So what would be that kind of main event look like for CM Punk or Kevin Owens, if you will? Because there's a question that could fit either one of those guys.
In the case of CM Punk, it's most WrestleMania main events are the right story at the right time with the right intensity to where it feels like this, where you get that big fight feel. I know that term's been killed to death, but when you feel the intensity in the air, when you can feel a tension between the two competitors to where this is what you want to see, that feeling validates most main events on any pay-per-view, let alone a WrestleMania. So for this situation, Punk can't be in a better situation unless he was facing Seth one-on-one. And the only reason why we don't have that tension with that anymore is because we've seen enough Punk and Seth one-on-ones at this point to where if they were going to give us that, it should have been held or Mania first, and then post Mania we could have gotten the rematches. But considering where he is creatively right now, this was the best situation he could have gotten to get that main event, especially considering that there was no chance on this earth that if Roman was active for this Mania, he wasn't going to get one of those two closing matches. So this is the best situation for him now. It could have been a world title situation with Seth last year, but everything broke
Messed
at
up
the
when
last
he got
second.
hurt. He got hurt.
Yes.
He got
And
hurt.
to be fair, Seth shouldn't even have been at WrestleMania that year either, considering how hurt he was. But he toughed it out. He pushed as best as he could, you know. But the reality of the situation is that this is the best scenario, considering all that has happened. And I am happy for him again that he does get this opportunity. You could see the emotion on his face from SmackDown when they were doing the contract signing. I'm there. I again, it's the feeling that you feel. And in the case of Punk, if this is the best chance he has to get this, I'm happy for him. I will still always be on the side of, as a wrestling fan, you would want those talents to get that much more because they've sacrificed so much and you can feel it in your bones that they do deserve even more than what they're getting. So that's how I feel about it.
Okay. No, that's a good. It's a good talk. It's a good talk. Um, good stuff.